Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Chitalayam. And today we're going to be talking about extroversion. And as always, we have a starting question to get to know everybody on the panel. And today's question is, who is a celebrity you would like to be friends with? And so I'll get started. I'm Ilakkiya, and I'd like to be friends with Paul Rudd. So he plays Ant-Man, and at least in the movie, his personality is just really fun and wholesome and genuine. So, anyways, I really like the character he played. Not sure if that's how he is in real life, but for that reason, I'd like to be friends with Paul Rudd. I'll give it to Akshay.
Yeah, Paul Rudd, like the guy who never ages. That is a very good answer. If you do meet him, like ask him that question, like, how do you never age? Uh, anyway, so the answer for mine is Aishwarya Rajesh. She's a Tamil actress. I think she has acted in a few other films as well, like outside of Tamil industry. But she's from Chennai. She speaks Tamil really well, and I also feel like she has like that local vibe. At the same time, she's a celebrity, and I also know that like she is like opinionated on like a lot of these things. So I would love to like meet her and have a chat. So if she's friends with me, that would be even amazing. So Deepak, what's your
I
celebrity
would like
friend?
to be friends with Lewis Hamilton, seven-time world champion of Formula One. I really admire his life story and all that he's gone through, all the challenges he's faced to get to where he is, where now he has the world record for the most number of Formula One race wins and most number of championships. So it's a sport that's been around since the 1950s. So to be the best out of all of these people, to not give up despite everything that happened in his personal life, in his professional life, all of the challenges that he's faced, all of the criticism he's overcome. He's also the first black person to be in Formula One. He takes a lot of stands based on his values and beliefs, which uh, may not be in line with the image that his sponsors might want him to have, but he still takes a stand, and I really respect all of that. So he just seems like a cool guy to hang out with. So much to pick his brain on, so much to learn from him. He has a fashion line now. He's doing some music. He finds time to do all of these things. He's so motivated. I would love to just spend a day with him and just hang out with him.
Nice. Very thoughtful answers from everybody. So we can get started with the discussion today. And we're talking about extroversion. So, what is extroversion? Let's define it first. What does it mean? What are we talking about today?
Extroversion is something sorry. Extroversion is something that where like a person just like is gregarious in the sense that like he goes out there and he wants to be out there. He puts himself in like situations which I think is open to a lot more like social like uncomfort and all that those things wants to have a lot of friends. And I mean I'm sort of saying it like in terms of like extrovert than extroversion. But I also think that when people like reject reject them in a sense that with I don't want to talk to you, like they would just move on to the next person, because the world, like the people in their lives, I think we're like way bigger, whereas someone else like might have like few close friends, that sort of thing. So I think that sort of thing is what like, extroversion is, like like extra friendly, extra outgoing, that sort of thing.
Right. I think that makes sense. So extroverted people tend to be more assertive. You find that in group situations, the leader tends to be more often than not an extrovert, simply because these people volunteer first. They're seen to have a certain kind of charisma. uh, Maybe it's the way they talk, their voice, the body language, all of that as well. But really, it's a facet of their personality. There's this theory of big five personality traits, right? So there's openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, neuroticism, and agreeableness. So this is one of the major five traits, and everybody falls somewhere on that spectrum. So one of the interesting things that has come up when Akshay and I were talking about this topic a while ago was should we spell it extraversion or extroversion? And where does that difference come from? And I actually did look it up. It comes from a Latin word, and so if we're being super technical, extraversion is the way to go. That's the way Carl Jung, famous psychologist, he's written about it. But in 1918, Phyllis Blanchard changed the spelling in a paper that she wrote and slightly modified the meaning as well. And ever since, in popular parlance, especially in America, extroversion and extrovert has been used because it also goes in line with introvert. So most people today use extrovert unless you're looking at research papers where I think for the most part they still use extraversion.
Yep. I was looking that up too, and I found similar answers as to why they're spelled differently. Why is this video called extroversion, but we hear the word extrovert more commonly? And yeah, the way that I found the definition for extrovert, I found like two different sources. One was the Myers-Briggs website, and how they kind of defined it is where you put your energy towards. And extroversion means you put more energy into the outside world and get more energy back from the outside world, relying on external factors, people, and things to kind of focus more on those rather than inner thoughts and prioritizing that second
Okay.
instead of putting external factors first. And I was also trying to find the way Carl Jung defined it because he was the one who came up with the term extroversion. And some of the things that they've mentioned is that their prime motivation is external factors and they exist confidently in a space. They don't have much fear towards things, right? If they are worried about, like, they just dive head in, and instead of staying back, trying to analyze every single detail and make sure everything, like, you have a personal sense of understanding rather than before jumping into something new. And they generally share things with other people, make decisions by sharing with other people, and tend to prioritize optimism and altruism. And anything that kind of takes away like a positive attitude is generally avoided for favor happy social situations. So those are the ways that I've learned about extroversion and what it means.
That makes a lot of sense. So let me ask a very simple question. Do the two of you see yourselves as extroverts or introverts? If you had to put yourself on a scale of 100, 0 to 100, how high would you put your extroversion?
I was ranking just my extroversion on the scale, uh, maybe somewhere in the 40s to 60s range, which is solidly in the middle, because I would classify myself more as an introvert because I tend to, whenever there's a scenario that I'm confronted with or a situation that I'm trying to comprehend, I tend to just reflect on it myself. I write things out, or I do a lot of introspection. So that's why I would classify myself as an introvert. But at the same time, I know that I get a lot of happiness from being with friends, which is that comes along the extroversion scale. But at the same time, like, while I do enjoy spending time with them, I do always want to reset afterwards in a way. It's like my social meter is drained to some extent, and I'm like, now I just want to go home and sleep. I just want to watch TV by myself. And in the end, like, there are things that I do to kind of be for myself and calm myself outside of enjoying the social situation. So I do it all. And in terms of the extrovert introvert classification, there's also a thing called an ambivert. We should talk about that later. And so I would rank myself kind of in the middle. I do some extroverted things, but I would not classify myself as an extrovert.
Okay.
That is interesting. Um, I would call myself an introvert as well, even though like all my friends would call me an extrovert. Because it also depends on the definition of what you think extrovert and introvert is. Because the way I see it, it's like where you get your energy from, and like I feel that I get energy from sort of like that some amount of space to like just be myself, be alone, and do my thing. Where like I either read manga or I just like watch some videos, those sort of things. But at the same time, I am not really a shy person. I do go and talk to a lot of people, and like I am very open with things, and I've even had arguments with I had to defend myself to say I'm an introvert because people didn't believe me. So I and I do know like the ambivert scale as well. Like I mean, ambivert is part of the scale as well. But I personally still think I'm just an introvert. Like I'm not an ambivert. I'm not an extrovert. I'm an introvert. But because the energy I feel I still get it from like being alone, that sort of thing. But that doesn't if we just say are you outgoing, are you open, and if you just ask me those questions, I would say yes, I am outgoing. I do like going to spend time with people and everything. Uh, so it's a tricky question, but Deepak, why don't you give your answer?
Okay, so I did take the Big Five personality test, and my extroversion score is in the 80s. So presumably, I'm an extrovert. But I think it's worth dividing it up into these smaller factors of what makes up extroversion. So that's gregariousness, friendliness, uh, activity seeking, cheerfulness, um, energy, and there was one other factor I think I don't remember now, but so it's all these different factors, right? So they all combined make up this trait, and so we might have lower levels on some of these traits. Oh, the other one was assertiveness, right? So we might have lower levels on some of these traits and much higher levels on other sub traits. So I think it's worth looking at it from that perspective as well. I imagine I'm more of an assertive person, a more excitement seeking person. I don't know if people would describe me as unusually friendly. I don't think I am. So I would be more average on that. But when combined, I think my extroversion is relatively higher.
You brought up the big five personality test, right? Is that what you're coming up with all these factors from within
Yes.
the extroversion category? Okay.
Yes.
We should probably explain a bit more what the big five personality test is, and we could possibly talk about our scores as well, Akshay, and I could do that. So what is the big five personality test, Deepak?
So the Big Five personality test is based on this theory that everybody's personality can be distilled into five major traits that define them. This theory has been around since the 1980s, which was built on earlier theories that have existed. The five traits are neuroticism, openness to experience, um, extroversion, conscientiousness, and agreeableness. Are these terms familiar enough, or do you think we should go into further
I
explanations of
can
what they are?
I do have the website where I took the test up, so I can add a sentence about each of them.
Okay.
Openness is people being open to new thought and um, ex- creative adventures in different ways. Conscientiousness is the person's ability to exercise self-discipline and control, and it's how organized or determined people are. Extroversion is the entire topic of today, and the energy that you get from the external world. Agreeableness is a person's tendency to put others' needs before their own and how likely they are to cooperate with others. And neuroticism is a person's tendency to experience negative emotions, including fear, sadness, anxiety, guilt, and shame. It's kind of like an alarm system. So those are what each of those are. And we can talk about our extroversion scores. So when I was answering your question earlier, Deepak, I was just like ranking myself in my head, but the actual score that I got for extroversion is a 44%. So very much in the range of like I'm not more than 50%. I do some extroverted things, but that's not my highest score. In that test, my highest score was actually 90% for openness.
That's incredible. I think the average for openness is somewhere in the mid 70s, 73 or something like that. So 90 would be pretty high.
So Akshay, what were your scores like?
My extrovert scale, like that was 60%. So this test just tell me that I am an extrovert, but I don't read this, I don't hear this, I know what I am, and I still have my beliefs. But anyways, I do get why it's 60%, and with openness I had 75, and this test was like it wasn't a lot of questions. I would encourage the audience to take a question, and we'll put the link to the test in the description.
Right. It's normally you should go to a psychologist and do it, but you can take these free online tests. They're relatively accurate so long as you're being honest with your answers. And it shouldn't be surprising that Akshay and I have scores somewhere in a similar range, given that we're brothers, because about 40 to 60% of the extroversion trait is heritable. That's what the research shows. The rest of it is nurture, your experiences, how you grew up, the culture, your personal history, all of that.
That is very interesting, and I want to ask a question, which is like slightly going from this tangent, which is if you take the Harry Potter houses, and then
Right.
if you had to rate them on these things, how would you think that it would be rated?
I would imagine Hufflepuff at the top, Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, and then no wait, Slytherin, and then Ravenclaw.
Okay. Ilakkiya, what about you? What do you think?
I would agree with that ranking scale, right? Because I think one of the possible stereotypes that might be relevant to the way I'm thinking about this is it that if you're extroverted you have friends, and if you're introverted you have no friends, right? Like that might be a stereotype, but reality is that everybody has friends, right? And I think the way that at least the Harry Potter house is going, like they all have good relationships. I know Gryffindors are like more adventurous, so they're probably like with a bunch of people trying to do a bunch of things. So I'd rank them high on the scale. Hufflepuffs very much like to kind of do nicer things for more people and are more sociable, in my opinion. So again, put them high on that scale for extroversion. Ravenclaw would not be necessarily high on the scale because while they might enjoy having a good time with friends, in the end, I feel like they're intellectually inclined, so that might mean they're more introspectively inclined as well to like think and like analyze things, and then before like coming up with answers or solutions to share with the group. And then Slytherins are always conspiring together. So again, working with other people, getting fun from shenanigans. So that's extroverted. So I 100% agree with Deepak's scale.
That was very interesting because I probably would have rated the same way. I was thinking between Hufflepuff and uh, Gryffindor, which one to put at the top, because one was like the most friendly, and the other one was like more outgoing because of the bravery and stuff. And I was thinking which would I think is like more important towards the word extrovertedness, and I couldn't really give an answer. So I'm glad you both were able to give one.
And
That is an interesting thought exercise. So, given that you're dividing them into houses, your character traits and stuff, similar question is: do you think that there are certain careers that introverts are better at or better suited for, and certain careers that extroverts are better suited for?
Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, there's probably even research that shows that. So if I can find one, I'll probably like put it in the description. But I would think things like like journaling, where you have to ask people a lot of questions, interview people, and those sort of things. You have to be somewhere in the higher scale, with like the extrovertedness. Whereas if you are like a bit low on the scale, then I think you would rather like to be in a place where it's not a lot of people, but like for example, like an office setting, you can be an extrovert or an introvert. But I think introverts like also work a lot better with those sort of things. Whereas with extrovert, I think they would want to be like moving people. At least that's the way I'm like picturing it in my head when you ask that question. So it's sort of people who have like who keep relocating to like different places where they have to get acclimatized right away, and like meet new people time to time, and of course build relationships and everything. But it's also just like the amount of people that they meet is like a lot of people. So that's the way I'm thinking, but I don't know what the research shows.
I'd agree with Akshay, 100%. Because, I mean, you want to be doing a job that you enjoy, right? And one of the basic distinguishing characteristics between extroverted people and introverts is that where do you gain energy from, right? So you'd want to do a career that gives you energy and gives you happiness. So for that, I would maybe classify careers like business, where you need to network with a lot of people, work with a lot of people, sell your ideas, work in teams. Those might be good for extroverted people. I'd say careers like where you have to work with people on like doctors, nurses, veterinarians. Surprisingly, veterinarians do work a lot with the humans as well. It's not just like you work with the animals, you got to talk to the humans to learn about their animals. So careers like that where you directly interact with people, it definitely will help if you're outgoing, like super energetic and talkative with the people you're going to work with. Um, Although people do have their preferences for how much they'd like their doctor to talk to them, different thing. But so careers like that would probably be better for extroverted people. And for those who are introverted, more places where you tend to be working more alone, or you don't necessarily have to interact with too many people every single day, all the time. So you're just getting drained by being at work. So I'm trying to think of examples, not really sure, but at least I'm in a research lab, so I can give that as an example, right? It's a smaller team. I mean, depends on your lab size, but you end up doing more things alone. You do talk to other people to present stuff, but like most of your time is spent like doing things on your own, thinking a lot, introspecting. Um, so careers like that where maybe it's less teamwork or less constant interaction with other people. You don't have to meet new people all the time in your job. You're kind of working with the same group of people all the time. Those careers might be better for the kind of energy you could get as and it's an introvert. So long answer, but
That's
yeah.
interesting. So with introverts, I was thinking things like accountants and people who, I mean, computer programmers, people who work in IT. There's a lot less public facing roles in those fields. So you don't have to interact with more people than you would prefer. There's a lot of time you would need to just sit and focus on your own work, and then you would have some interaction. But that I mean, I think all humans do need interaction. It's just a question of how much they seek it and how much it energizes them. For extroverts, I would imagine more public facing roles like law, politics, pediatricians, sales, PR, HR. So a lot of these roles, I think people who are more extroverted would enjoy more. You guys gave some good examples too, so I'm trying to avoid giving the same ones.
Yeah. Good insight.
So with that, you guys have like talked about jobs. So in that, I think there's also like the leadership thing, which I think the research does show that whether irrespective of whether you get your energy from like people or like from like being alone, like whether you're an introvert or not an extrovert, you do have to be outgoing at certain times. Like be assertive, and you do need to have those qualities as a leader, because a leader has to be a jack of all trades who should like work with the needs of the people who are working under him or under her or under them, and that is very important. So with regards to leadership, like what are your guys' thoughts on extroversion?
So you bring up a good point. The thing is, extroverts tend to get picked as leaders more simply because they're more assertive, and being assertive is seen as a sign of leadership. They tend to be more socially dominant. They tend to take up a lot of space when they sit, when they tend to do a lot of the talking. um, Introverts might actually be better listeners and might even have better answers to give, but the extroverts are more likely to get their views across. So that does lead to an imbalance, and we have to be careful about how we're picking leaders, and are we picking the most suitable one, or are we just picking the most obvious one? The other thing is, it's good to have a team of extroverts because that does lead to a lot of fun. But during times of conflict, it is kind of hard to manage multiple extroverts on the team if they're all trying to be socially dominant, uh, especially if they're low on agreeableness.
Similar vein, I kind of want to tie together a few things. Because Deepak, when you mentioned that, a possible career for people who might be more extroverted is law and politics, I was reminded of one of the things I mentioned in the definition, where when things are unfamiliar, extroverts tend to dive into it like right away, and while introverts might be more likely to think and analyze before starting their approach to a conflict. And at least in that answer, what it takes to be a leader, you have good characteristics in both introverts and extroverts that would make them good for a leadership position in terms of maintaining social harmony or making good progress or being thoughtful in the actions that the group is taking. I think both introverts and extroverts can be well suited for leadership. And I kind of wanted to share a story. So I was doing an interview, a group interview. I was the interviewer. I was kind of observing different people in the group to see how they were performing in a group setting to understand would they work well in a group setting. And uh, for this one group of 10 people that I was observing, there was a group of like 3 or 4 people who were, you could probably classify them as extroverted. They were very loud, they were very talkative, and they were talking over everyone else. And they were taking up so much space in the room that not many other people were able to join group conversations, or their voices were never heard at all, period. So if an extroverted leader is super talkative and doesn't always listen, then that's not going to be great for the team either. So I think you need a balance of traits, and that kind of jumps into like, what does it mean to be an ambivert? And in general, personality is situational, right? Like, the way you behave with different people is different, and your personality changes depending on who you're with. And the reality is that, according to Carl Jung, because he talked about being an ambivert later on too, being an extrovert or introvert is actually a minority. And most people are classified as ambiverts, where you have a blend of traits of extroversion and introversion. And like 2/3 of the world falls into the ambivert category. It is actually a minority to be a part of purely I'm an extrovert or purely I'm an introvert. So what do you think? Um, like, do you think it's incorrect to try and like label people on the spectrum or at all, or to just let them be what they are in situations? Like, what does it matter? What do you think?
I don't think it's inappropriate to label them. I think it is useful for people to understand where they fall on that spectrum because it helps them design their lives in a way that's more satisfying to them.
Mm,
Having said that, I think we tend to underestimate how many people are introverts or ambiverts because extroverts tend to be overrepresented in our social structures, the networks, simply because they tend to have more social engagements with people than others. So, in any particular person's social circle, you'll probably find more extroverts than the general population would have. Does that make sense?
for sure. Yeah. Because extroverts, one of the things is like you have a bigger group of friends compared to introverts who have like a smaller group of friends as well. So does that lead to different stereotypes about people? Because if the social representation you see is more of extroverts and you get to see more things of them, does it create harmful or bad stereotypes about ambiverts or introverts? Or are there negative stereotypes about extroverts too, which they might feel beholden to?
I think like because of the ability, because you can be an introvert, say like in 2020 or 2021, then be like an extrovert or an ambivert in 2023, and then like change back to introvert in 2025, and then go back to extroversion. And the thing is, you can keep switching, and doesn't even have to take 2 years. You can even be way smaller than that. So I think it's more of not who you are. It's not a part of your. I don't think it's a part of your identity. It's a temporary identity that you are picking for yourself, depending on the position that you exhibit those traits. So with those things, I think like us knowing the negative aspects of being an extrovert, or the negative aspects of being an introvert, or like what the theory says, knowing those things I think would help us, because at least I hope that it helps us, because you at least get to know like what can go wrong with these things, and like people have done research on these things. So it's easier for you to put yourself in whatever position that you want to put yourself in. And while I say that you can be like you can get to whatever it is, I don't know what it's like to transform yourself from, like, say, an extrovert into an introvert, that sort of thing. So I don't know if you can like just say, you know what, I'm going to be extrovert from now, and or you know what, I want to be an introvert from now, and then actually going there and doing it. That is something I don't know how that would work. So that would be an interesting thing.
That's a very good point you bring up. So one of the things that we know about personality is that it tends to be stable over time with age as well, but it is also not entirely inflexible, and it can be changed to some extent with conscious effort. So the research shows that extroversion is the kind of trait that peaks in your 30s, and after your mid 50s until your 90s, it sort of slowly declines. And that does show that it is something that can change. And given that it's not entirely a heritable trait, there's definitely a large nurture component to it. I think it's also fair to say that you can train yourself to become more friendly or more gregarious or more assertive, or to be more active. It's something you can do consciously using your own will, but it is also the kind of thing where change is not going to be fast. It's going to be progressive, it's going to be gradual, but over time you can become a different person to some extent.
That actually makes me want to ask like a question, because how like college changes a lot, and like going to a different country, those sort of things, it does changes a lot, right? But like when you go back and like meet people before that, you tend to become the same person that you were with them. So let's say you were an extrovert and then you became an introvert, or you were introvert then you became an extrovert, by, like, say, going to a new country or a new state, college, whatever. And then how do you maintain that? Because that is who you are. But then how do you maintain, let's say, let's assign roles, right? So let's say you were an introvert and then you have become an extrovert after coming to college, uh, and then now you are meeting your friends from school, where you used to be an introvert. So how do you still be the extrovert, like with your friends, like your school friends as well?
So the
This
premise is
is
you have. Go ahead. Go
you go
ahead,
you go
Deepak.
ahead.
No, I just wanted a clarification. So the premise is you became more extroverted coming to college. So how do you keep that with friends from before in like high school? Go ahead, Deepak. Just wanted the
All right, so
clarification.
yeah, this is an interesting question. The thing is, I think that who you're with has a huge influence on how much you display these traits. the kind of company you have, their own temperament, because that rubs off on you. Our personalities are often shaped by the kind of people that we spend a lot of time with. There's this common rule where they say we are the average of the five people we spend the most time with. I don't think that's entirely accurate, but it's also not baseless. So it's a question of who you're with, what their temperament is, how much you like them, how much you enjoy spending time with them, how comfortable you are, how validated you feel in that crowd, and all of that. The other thing is people tend to pigeonhole you into a certain category or a certain understanding of uh, what kind of person you are. And so once your reputation is built up as an introvert, it it becomes hard for them to see you in a different mold. And so what happens with that is that they still tend to try and pigeonhole you into the same old person that you were, and it takes them a while to acknowledge that you have changed because they come in with those preconceived notions of who you still are. So that I think is natural. I think we also do that. I mean, if we were the old friends from school, we would assume that people remain the way they are, but they would have changed, because change is the one thing that you can guarantee is always going to happen. It's a constant. So yeah.
I would agree with Deepak. Um, there's probably different life experiences and scenarios that led to you being more introverted in high school and more extroverted in college. And I mean, the change can go one way or the other, but in this scenario, it depends on the people around you at the time, right? So if your high school friends uh, had a certain dynamic that led to you feeling more drained from that kind of social interaction, uh, compared to the interactions you have in college, then it would make sense that when you go meet them again, you will have more of an introverted experience in terms of not having a fantastic like time of your life with your friends and needing to recharge and recuperate afterwards. So depending on the people and how much they have changed as well, depending on their like if you're splitting personality traits along the big five lines, like their agreeableness, their openness to um, like other people and change, you might be able to continue the extroverted personality in that scenario as well. It just depends on um, how big the extroversion is in your life at the moment, I would say. In college, if it's a big part of your personality and your identity, I don't think that'll all be erased just because you met your friends. So some of that will still show up, but to what extent depends on how comfortable you are with the people there. And the way you behave in any scenario is adaptive for your success in that scenario, right? You want to do what's gonna keep you happy and successful in that situation. So you'll adapt to what you need. And just to make a point along the lines of things change, I took this Big Five personality test in 2018. So that was when I was in my 12th grade of high school, and I was comparing the scores. And at least on extroversion, mine was 77 back in high school, and now it's 44. So kind of along the lines of adaptive, was it adaptive for the pandemic? Was it adaptive just because like this is what my life is more like now? But yeah, things do change.
That makes me want to ask another question, which is if you can be an introvert and then change to an extrovert, or an extrovert to then be an introvert, then people who have social anxiety, uh, you know, like can they use the same measures to, like not have social anxiety?
A lot of it comes down to fear of judgment, fear of rejection. They're overthinking these things. Before they talk to someone, they pre-reject themselves in their own head, right? That's very common. I'm sure all of us have done it at some point. So it really just comes down to being okay with looking stupid or foolish, but still going and approaching that person anyway, saying hello. You don't have to think that you have to have a great opening line or something completely profound to say. Most people, if they want to talk to you, they're going to talk to you. If they don't, they're going to politely tell you that they're not interested, right? They're not going to put you down or hate you for it. People are nice in general. So I think it's just internalizing that, first of all, it's okay to get rejected. That is how you learn whether they are interested in being friends with you or whatever you want to do with them. Secondly, I think it's also important to internalize that it is okay even if you look foolish in front of people. For the most part, you will never see these people again. So their judgment should not dictate how you live your life. Um, and yeah, I mean, I guess part of it is also just convincing yourself that you're going to be okay.
Yeah, that's a really nice answer as to what are some ways to deal with like possible social anxiety in situations. And at least my first instinct, Akshay, for your question was to think, maybe it's not that easy to switch, especially if, part of social anxiety is you're very worried about what's going to be the outcome in the social scenario, right? And that puts that person perhaps more on the introverted side of things where they're going to be stressed out in the situation and it's not going to give them energy, it's going to take it away. Uh, and what would it mean to then try and embody extroverted characteristics of being confident in the face of not knowing what's going to happen, trying to make the most of that moment in a way, and instead of thinking too much and being in one's own head? Um, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I don't think it's very simple and straightforward, and it takes a lot of, I guess, kind of changing and addressing the way you think about social situations, trying to actually reconcile and internalize the difference of your own self-talk towards yourself of how you think it's going to go versus the way that people act to you, because depending on who you're surrounding yourself with, they might generally just be nice people and not bullies or mean people. So uh, I think it's going to take a lot of uh, experiences and help from other people around you to show you that it's not going to necessarily be stressful. No one really knows what's going on in a social situation anyway. Most people are flying by the seat of their pants. No one comes
Right.
with pre-planned questions. It's not an interview. uh, no one really knows what's going to happen. You just try to keep bouncing off the other person. So I think a lot of experiences and good friends would make it easier to switch to more feeling more energetic and energized and kind of enjoying yourself when you're in social situations.
That makes sense because people tend to be much more critical of themselves and aware of their flaws than others are of their flaws. And that is something that we need to remember. When we see someone in a social situation, they're not as consistently aware of all of our flaws as we are. And so they're not judging us the way we're judging ourselves.
Exactly.
So it also helps to not compare ourselves with what we see of others and then assume, oh, well, they're so much better at socializing with people than I am. You don't know what's going through their head. They might look like they have it easy and they're not feeling nervous. But I think all human beings have at least some nervousness about being judged, or I mean, everybody needs validation.
Yes.
The level of it might vary, but all people need it, and everybody goes through struggles and has self doubt and self critique. So you really don't have to feel like you're trying to impress people who are doing way better than you in life or anything like that. They're just people just like you. You can go talk to them, and they'd be happy that you came and spoke. A lot of the time, even introverted people, if someone comes up to them, they show kindness, they show appreciation, just acknowledge them, they're still going to feel good. Introverted people, it's not as though they don't like it when people talk to them, right?
Yeah, that would be a stereotype if that were true. That's not the case. But yeah, and in fact, if you are worried about the way you appear in a social situation, others might actually be thinking that you are doing much better than they are in that social situation, and when you're worried about what you're doing, and revealing that fear, being vulnerable and saying like, I don't really feel like I know what I'm talking about here. You all seem much more like coherent and put together in this scenario, and I'm just stressed out and worrying. You might be surprised at what they tell you that would end up affirming you in terms of they weren't worried about that. They thought you were doing great. they didn't think that you were stressed because you were bringing up really good points and following up on things they were saying. They might have noticed how thoughtful you were being in addressing everybody in the social situation. So, you might be surprised to hear what other people think of you compared to just your own mind voice criticizing you. We are our worst critic in most scenarios.
Yeah, it's actually called spotlight effect. Because you know yourself like the best, you also know your flaws the best, and you also think that people think of your flaws like when they meet you, well, because you might be thinking about them, but then no, that's not the case. And like usually, for example, like when you go to interviews or like other places where you're very self-conscious about yourself, that's or when like like dating where you go for your first date and those sort of things where you are in a place of being self-conscious, where you are in a place of where you are very self-conscious. That is when like you think that people think about you in these ways, but then like the research shows that that's not the case, and it's just like a spotlight effect.
That's interesting. So I had another question regarding this. How does extroversion or introversion affect how you are in a partnered relationship? Uh, do extroverts have more of an adventure seeking mentality? Does that make them more likely to cheat in a relationship? Is it more fun to be with a certain personality type in a relationship? Do certain types of people handle conflict better? Can an introvert and an extrovert make a relationship work? What do you guys think of all this?
Very interesting questions. That's the first thing I gotta say. I don't want to give the wrong answer to this because I throw slippers slash eggs slash apples, where whatever they have in their head, like on their hands. Um, but I mean, if evolution has shown anything, it shows that like things can be done to make it work, and things can also be done to not make it work, and that's what evolution is all about. So I think the thing is, it's all about the belief of being able to do it, and and hopefully having a placebo effect to make it work. And because if you are going into a relationship with introvert, extrovert, ambivert, whatever, and you think what, this is probably not going to work out because and then or if you have if you think the signs of stars, like I forgot the thing, but like Libra and those sort of things, if you think that yeah, but he's a Libra, or dude, yeah, but he's Aquarius, or those sort of things, and then I mean, I don't think they matter. No offense, but even
Zodiac?
other than zodiac signs, I don't think they matter. But even other than
Sure.
that, even other than that, what I do think matters is that if you, I do think if because zodiac signs, if you think this is gonna work out and have that extra belief from it, I think that will have an effect because of the placebo effect that would have, and like just the inner belief that you have in the thing that it is going to work out. You would take extra steps to make it work, and like that would have an effect. But zodiac signs, just because zodiac signs having a direct impact, I don't think it does.
Uh, yes, spicy questions, Deepak. So first answer, I don't think that alone would, or the fact that someone is more extroverted would make them more likely to cheat. Just because like they have a lot of friends or they like new experiences doesn't mean that they would hate spending time with their partner, right? Like if they enjoy spending time with their partner, that's still a social engagement they're getting energy from compared to being completely alone in their room, right? So I don't think that alone is a metric. And the controversial take I'm about to take is that if an introverted and extrovert are together, then if the extrovert's friendships with everyone else and like more a lot you would have to assume a lot about the relationship in this take, but if the extrovert has a lot of friends and it's more like casual social um not like deep connections with a lot of people, then what if the partner feels like they're not deeply connected with and they want to have someone who like really understands them, and what if they're more likely to cheat, right? Because they want to actually get with someone who understands them. Bottom line, it's up to the person, right? And that's I don't think being extrovert alone is going to make someone more likely to cheat. And then, can they work out in a relationship? I believe yes, as long as you don't make any assumptions about the other person. Let's say that you both know, like, hey, I'm an introvert, and the other person knows, oh, I'm an extrovert, and you both know that about each other. Then it would be good not to make assumptions like, uh, oh, I'm going out with my friends and not inviting them along because you assume they're going to hate being in social situations, or wanting to journal, introspect, or just watch TV by yourself, and uh, yes, or not understanding that you want alone time, or choosing to be there when you want time by yourself. I mean, basically, it can work. Maybe it might be complementary to each other. It might be a bit more difficult in terms of things that you might like to do together. Maybe two extroverts would be more likely to go to parties together, and maybe the extrovert wants to do that, but the introvert doesn't want to do that, and that's just something you have to work out. But you can make it work out. People have strong, healthy relationships across all kinds of possible bridges and boundaries that need to be crossed and worked out, but people make it happen. And yeah,
All
that's
right, so I threw a curveball, and both of you have very skillfully skated around it. So neither of you is going to be cancelled. Well done on that answer.
not too
And
sober that.
yeah, and with that, we'll go to closing thoughts because I don't want to answer more curveball questions. So, what do you guys think about today's discussion?
It's something that I was bringing up at different points throughout the video, and I think basically to some extent we kind of did myth busting in a way about different stereotypes or ideas there are about extroversion and even introversion to an extent. And so I would just like to close off by saying that this is just a extroversion is just a part of someone's personality. It is kind of adaptable in the situation, and um, it's there's something called being a shy extrovert as well, where you do enjoy being in social situations and you like get a lot of energy from them and you like being there, but you're a bit nervous to speak up or like start engaging, right? And that in reality, most people are ambiverts, right? It's you do some of both. It's hard to just be purely one thing all the time. And that's okay. That's all good. Do what makes you happy. There we go.
So yeah, that was good. I think that everyone likes appreciation, whether they're introverts or extroverts. So if you have something good to say about someone, just go ahead and say it. Don't worry about whether they're introverts or not. And yeah, I mean, if you really want to go talk to someone, you see someone, you think they might be interesting, you want to say something to them. I think most of the time it's still worth saying, and even if they're introverts, they're going to appreciate it more often than not. And you're almost never likely to get slapped down in a way that harms you psychologically. So the more you go and approach people, the more you talk to them, the easier it gets. It's just something that gets better with practice, and then you become more confident in social situations. And generally, being more socially confident does track with a lot of other good life outcomes in terms of career, in terms of fulfilling relationships. You can have you can have few friends who are good friends, but still building good relationships does require taking some level of social risk, and that is something I would encourage everyone to do.
Akshay?
For me, I was thinking along lines with where where they rate themselves in the extrovert scale, like what their shopping habits will be. I thought that would be an interesting thing to think about. And then another thing is like their love languages, how that would be different. Because I'm assuming an extrovert would be good at giving words of affirmation, and whereas I think with an introvert, I think
Access
quality
service.
time would be good, or access services would be good, because with access services that can be done, that doesn't have to be done, like with the person being there. Like, it can be like, doing the dishes and nobody else is there, but like it's a way of showing love. Or with quality time, it's sort of thing where quality time is like it depends on where it is. Maybe like that's the ambivert thing where they have to choose which one works the best. And like, I thought those sort of things would be very, very interesting. So and we are doing this new thing where we ask a question to the audience every time. So we started that last week, so we're going to do that this week too. And my question this time is, in the extroverted scale, where would you want yourself to be? Like, it's not about where you are, but where would you want yourself to be? And that's my question for you. And please let us know in the comment section.
Good. Thank you everyone for tuning in and listening to us talk about extroversion today. We had a lovely conversation and we hope to see you next week.
And subscribe.
Yep. We want the appreciation too.
Yeah, like, comment, subscribe, do your thing, and the bell icon. Don't forget to press it.
Take care.
Thanks for watching. For more discussions, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Also, make sure to like and comment more topics that you'd like to see us discuss. We'll see you next time.